In this episode of Conversations with Glen Taylor, you will hear the story of how Glen finds his job and begins to make an impact at Carlson Letter Service. Glen's ingenuity and ability to find better ways to do things grabbed the attention of Mr. Carlson almost immediately.
I called up my brother, he was already in town, and asked him if he knew where I could get a part-time job. He didn't really. He said that he had one at the drugstore, he worked there. He says, I'm not aware of any jobs. I know that I went down to the hotel, applied at the hotel. I went just into stores and asked them, and didn't get, they just weren't hiring. That evening when I talked to my brother, he says, well, I heard there's a wedding shop that hires. And then he says, I don't know if they make dresses or what. I remember him saying like that. Or what? Well, where is that? Well, that's way down, kind of out of town. You got to go down, way down by the high school. And I hadn't gone down there because I thought Main Street was just Main Street. So I went down there and went in just a building between two residence houses. And I went in there and asked if I could get an application blank. And Pauline Myers was the lady who waited on me, and she said, well, we're not hiring. And I said, well, okay, can I fill out the application blank? And she said, sure. I mean, if you want to fill one out, that would be fine. So I filled out the application blank, and it was an 8.5 by 11 page both sides. So there's a lot of material for a little company, and they had that. I remember it was things on there. Which church do you go to? And stuff. A lot of things that we wouldn't do now. But Mr. Carlson really had his applications blanks for getting all the information he could get. So, okay, gave it back to Pauline, walked out the door, and it's just a sidewalk. I got down, I had not crossed the street. I was going to walk home. And had not crossed the street, and Dorothy Brown came out and hollered, hey, kid. He says, come back here. And what? She says, come back here. And so I walked back to her, and she says, well, we handed your application to Mr. Carlson. He's in his office, and he said that I was supposed to get you and come back. So I came in. Mr. Carlson, the way he had his desk, he was sitting at his desk, and he had a chair that you sat right beside him. So I came in, and he asked me to sit down right beside him. And he went over the application blank. It had everything on it, like I said. Where do you work, and this and that. And he said, well, and you, and you're, whatever I was, 17, 18 years old, and you have a baby, and you have a little girl. I said, yeah, that's me, and stuff like this here. He says, I suppose you really need a job. Well, that's why I'm trying to get a job. I said, this type of stuff. And then he switched the whole thing, and he just talked about himself. So I'm going to go on vacation. He says, I've never gone on vacation before, in like 2 weeks and stuff like that. You know, I mean, it was an interesting story. Where are you going? Well, we're going to go out to the Black Hills, and then we're going to go out to Yellowstone. We're going to go the whole thing. It's going to take you a couple of weeks. So he says, I don't know. I mean, I've been here, and I hire everybody. You know, I'm in the hiring. He says, I'm thinking maybe I'll hire you, because if somebody quits, then I already got him hired. Didn't seem too logical to me, but I thought it was a good idea. I went along with it. He says, come back next Monday. Well, it was just like Saturdays. Come back Monday, and ask for Dick Schudeman. He's a student that works here, and ask him to show you his job. And his job is to take care of the stock, work and get things on shelves and stuff like that. Okay. So I got up, walked out, I was so darn happy, I couldn't believe it. He was going to pay me $1 an hour, you know, and and I only had to work 4 hours a day and 8 hours on Saturday. You know, and I was kind of thinking, I don't have to work on Sundays, I guess. This is pretty good. So I said, okay. Now, on Monday, I come down there and I walked in front of the building. You come up to the thing, and Pauline and Dorothy were around there. So I'm Glen, you know, well, Mr. Carlson hired me. I was supposed to start today. Are you sure? I don't think so. Mr. Carlson's on vacation. And this type of stuff. I don't think, and he never said anything to us about hiring anybody. And I said, well, he did. You know, and I don't know, but then finally one of them went back to his desk and found my application blank, and he wrote on there hired. So it says, well, here's the application. It says hired, I suppose, and you're saying he hired you. Yep. I was supposed to see a Dick Schudeman, and he was going to show me what to do. Okay. He's a student. Okay. So they call up Dick Schudeman. Dick comes up there. Now, Dick was a little older. He had gone in the service and then gone to college. So he was a little bit more sophisticated than me. He says, so what are you saying? I said, well, I told him the story. Mr. Carlson hired me and told me to do that. Why would I show you my job unless he's going to get rid of me? I don't know. He didn't tell me. He said I was just supposed to go and see you. He says, well, I'm not showing you my job. He says, here, I'll show you a job. And he took me downstairs into the basement, and they had a hot stamping machine that you put designs on napkins. And it was a physical job, and nobody liked to do it. You had to pull this lever, did a napkin, this type of stuff. He says, here, you can do this. And he showed me how to do it. So I stamped napkins, and one at a time. I'm looking at this thing, and I'm saying, I should need a jig on here, and I could do it a lot faster if I had a jig that fit these napkins, and then I could just put them in and straight and get going on it. So I built a little jig out of a cardboard box and some material. Makes a little jig so the napkin slid in fast and pulled out fast, and everything worked fast, and did that. Did that job. Mr. Carlson's gone for 2 weeks, has his vacation, comes back. Now he comes back, he's there a couple of days. I don't even see him. I'm just down there doing my napkins. And he says, but Mr. Carlson always had you write down what you did every day. You had to write down what you did. And eventually it got turned in on his desk, and he always checked it out. So he eventually got the thing of how many napkins I did. And he came downstairs, I think this was about 3 days or 4 days after he had come back. And he sort of didn't believe that I was doing it 3 times as fast as the previous people. He says, you got this. Are you cheating? Or he didn't say, are you cheating? But are you, but I knew what his question was. So show me what you're doing. I said, well, I built this jig and I'm doing it. I do it. And I mean, it was obvious to him. He said, oh my gosh, you're doing it way faster than anybody ever has done this before. Well, oh gosh, that's really great of you. Why are you doing this? It was kind of an interesting question. Why would you do that? What's in it for you? It really was his question. And it's kind of like, I can remember now, I mean, it's like, what's in it for me? Well, why wouldn't I? Because I thought of it. I just thought of it that I could do that. Why wouldn't I do it that way? It's going to save you a bunch of money and this type of stuff. You still only pay me $1 an hour. It has nothing to do with that. But so I would do it. So he then had me do some other machines, speed them up a little bit, do some stuff like this here. Then he took me off that job, and he gave me Dick's job. And Dick quit. So I don't know what the deal was between Dick Schudeman. Dick ended up being a vice president of the bank in town here and very successful person and a friend of mine and all that. So it was one of those things. I don't know what happened, but I got that job as doing the stock work. The other things was just ratios, which is a math or physics. So using a press and stuff like this here, and you want it to go faster, the press comes with a standard belt on it and a standard pulley or roller on it, so it goes at a certain speed. And it was probably made, I don't know, for some particular product, but the product that we ran were all varied, and so therefore you should run it at different speeds. So I mean, that's one of the things I did, is put multiple pulleys on the thing. If you wanted it faster, you moved your belt over, to the big pulley. I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you wanted to go slower, you moved it over, this type of stuff. And you could use the same press, you could do things like this. So to me, that was sort of logical, but that would be another one that, just looking at it, why do you use the one speed when you got all kinds of different products here that require different speeds? You should switch your press to that. Safety, he had you could have gotten your fingers caught in a press, and they did get their fingers caught in the things. And there's safety things that you can do that aren't very complicated, but it's kind of like a bar that comes across. If you left your finger and it hit the bar would stop the press from going any further and take the pressure off and go the other way. I did a lot of that type of stuff. They were just safety stuff. They weren't very sophisticated, but it just said it stopped from smashing your fingers. Otherwise, people were putting their hand in, and they had to get their hand out before the machine went like this and put their name on their fingernails and stuff like that. A number of times through my career with him, he would ask me, why do I do that? When he had me doing the stock work, I changed how we ordered it. I changed the form he ordered it. I changed the quantity he ordered it, and it all saved him money and quite a bit. And he always asked me, why did I do that? And I didn't have a good answer other than, why not? It just seemed like obvious that you would do those things. So I know that eventually that he asked me to work for him and be an employee and stay there full time. That had probably the most to do with it, that he hadn't run into anybody before that actually saved him money but didn't have any reason to do it for themselves. And I don't know why I did that, other than it just seemed like the logical thing to do. But that's kind of how we got involved, and probably why he hired me.
Glen talks about the employees at Carlson Letter Service, the customers of the small Mankato business, and the type of work they were doing every day. Glen then describes the conversation he had with Mr. Carlson that would change both of their lives forever, as Glen chose to stay with the shop full time.
He hired two groups of people. One were housewives that he hired and worked there, and they were reliable. They were just really good people, reliable, but were not anybody who made any decision, nor did they want to make any decision to do that. So he had to make the decisions of what to do and this type of stuff. The other group were college students, that when I started there, they had college students. But for some reason most of them were vets. They were older people that had come across. So I was unique in that he had very few people that were 18 years old down there. So I think the vets were a little older. They were hired for a job. They would do what they were told to do. I think they all did it really, but they didn't have any reason. They were a little bit more sophisticated. Why should I do more than I'm asked to do, because I'm happy doing what I am doing? And they got paid the same as I got paid. It wasn't a big paid job. But as far as the culture, I would say Bill was really different. He was a good man. The word that's always was used for that, he was a good Christian man. And that's kind of questionable, I would say, in my mind, because to me some of the people were not doing a good job. and he didn't say anything, and he didn't do it about it. And when I came up and watching that, to me is, if somebody's working for you and cannot do a good job or doesn't know how to do a good job or it just doesn't work out, you're not doing them a favor by letting them continue to work there because you're not happy with their work. They know you're not happy, but they stay there and collect their money. So I always thought that if a person is having trouble doing their job, you're better off telling them you should look elsewhere for a job because you can do it. So I think he had built in some of those things, which really helped me eventually when he hired me full time to make some changes in people and stuff like that. I really went back to hiring people that looked like they were duplications of myself. They were small town or Mankato. Mankato was a small town for me. Students that didn't have much money and needed a job, and that's kind of, I fulfilled the whole population through that. But I guess that we still hired. My wife worked, Glenda worked there, and I can remember a number of other young women who worked there that I hired that were really good workers and stuff like this here. Dorothy and all those ladies all just worked on mimeograph typing statements. I know that we did do a lot of church work. People would bring in on Saturday, well, it must have been Friday, or else it was Saturday, because I worked on Saturday. So maybe it was Saturday. They bring in your church bulletin, the one that they handed out. That everybody in town sort of knew. You bring it down to Carlson's on Saturdays. We typed it up. We ran off the 200 that you need for your things. And we had a whole bunch of churches. I can remember that. But it had nothing to do with printing. It was all mimeographing. So he had that as a client base, I would say that. Weddings from his church, and maybe a couple other churches. The weddings he did. What else? I'm trying to think. What did we do? We knew how to do napkins. People knew that was one of the only places that you could personalize napkins. That got around. See, it was Carlson Letter Service.
Okay.
Was the name of the company at that time. Carlson Letter Service. Job shop. We do statements, we do typing, we do mimeographing, and if you need a little placards printed, we've got little hand presses that'll do it. I forgot to say that. When I changed it, you say Carlson Wedding. Well, that's Glen. Glen changed it to Wedding. Then Carlson Craft. We got to be something. We're nothing. We're Carlson Letter Service. I'm thinking I'm going to be a teacher. And the way Mr. Carlson did it, he still had the same desk, sat in the same place 3 years later, and asked me to come in and sit down. He did it the same way. Even after we moved into the other building and stuff, he had his desk, he had your chair, you came in, and he asked the same way. He didn't change that way. He was like, Glen, would you come in and see me? Yep. I'd come in, and I sat in that chair, and he'd pull out an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And he'd have it all typed. Everything that he was going to say was typed on that sheet of paper. Here is the sheet of paper. You're supposed to read it. I read it. Then and then he said what was on the sheet of paper. And it was always the same. It wasn't like, I'm thinking about hiring you. It wasn't like, thanks for doing a good work. I'm going to miss you when you graduate. I'm going down my line of thinking. I'm going to teach. And someplace he got in his mind that he wants me to stay. But he didn't forecast it. And nor did I really see, I tell you the truth, I didn't see the job. I mean, I worked there and did the stuff I didn't see the job. But when he said, what he said different, would you, something about the business. And I said to him, Bill, you don't have a business. You don't have a business. He's a little offended. What are you saying? I don't have a business. We have a business. No, you're a job shop, Bill. People just bring stuff up in. If they bring it in, you do the work, you make it. But you don't have something to go out there to sell. You know, well, we do so one of the things, we do wedding invitations. But Bill, the only wedding invitations are people that go to your church. And they know you, and they know you have the printing press, and they bring their daughter comes down here, and they order the thing. But it's only because they go to your church that they do it. Nobody that goes to the other churches ever think about bringing it in here. Well, how would you do it? Well, we have to get samples out to somebody. Who would that be? I don't know. Let me work on it. Figure out where a girl orders things. So we went to newspapers. How about bridal shops? Maybe we put them in bridal shops.